Every week this article will look at the best and toughest matchups for each position in fantasy football. It also will give you 5 players whose fantasy value is on the rise.
Best QB matchups: Taysom Hill vs Falcons. The Falcons have given up a ton of fantasy points to QBs this season. The 23.72 fantasy PPG allowed to the position is the second most in the NFL.
They also give up the second most passing yards per game, 306.9. This is an interesting one as Hill has not yet thrown a TD in the NFL and has been picking up points with his legs, but something's got to give here. Hill is a top 10 fantasy QB for me this week. Kirk Cousins vs Jaguars. Cousins has been playing good football as of late, you can read more on that below, and has a great matchup this week.
The Jaguars have given up the third most fantasy PPG to QBs this season, 21.99. They have also allowed a top 10 fantasy QB in 4 of their last 5 games.
Other favorable QB matchups: Colt McCoy vs C, Derek Carr vs NYJ, Baker Mayfield vs 10 best RB matchups: David Montgomery vs Lions. Montgomery returned from injury last weekend, in a great matchup against the Packers, he went off for 25. 3 fantasy points. The only team that allows more fantasy PPG to RBS than the Packers? Montgomery's Week 13 opponent, the Lions. On the year, Detroit has allowed the most fantasy PPG, 33.
2. Most touchdowns, 21. And second most yards per game, 165.6, to running backs. Fire up Monty this week. Miles Sanders vs Packers. You just read above about how the Packers allow the second most fantasy PPG to RBS this season, 31.
0-2. They allowed Montgomery to go off for over 25 fantasy points last week and have allowed an RB1, top 12, in 8 of their last 9 games. Other favorable RB matchups: Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor vs Howe, Frank Gore vs LV, Dalvin Cook vs Jack's. Best WR matchups: Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton vs Seahawks. Seattle has been better as of late, but on the season, it has still allowed a ton of production to receivers.
In fact, the Seahawks have allowed the most fantasy PPG, 51.23, and the most receiving yards per game, 240. 3. To WRs in NFL history. It's a small sample size, but last week Colt McCoy targeted Shepard 4 times and Tate 3 times and did not throw to Slayton.
This week Shepard is the preferred play, while Slayton is the home run swing. Michael Thomas vs Falcons. Thomas faced the Falcons 2 weeks ago and had his best game of the season, going for 19.
4 fantasy points on 12 targets, 9 catches and 104 yards. He is still searching for his first TD of the season though. Thomas Hasn't lived up to expectations this season, but you still must start him in this matchup.
Other favorable WR matchups: Jaguars WRs vs Min, Jarvis Landry vs 10, Nelson Aguilar vs NYJ.